Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome. Wherever you are joining us from today, I want to begin by acknowledging something simple. The fact that you are here means you already believe that the conversation we're about to have, it truly matters. My name is Dr. Marty Casey, and I am the founder of Ungun Institute. And I've spent my career sitting with communities that have been told in every possible way that their healing is not a priority. They've been told that their wholeness is optional and that systems built around them were not built for them. Today's event is called AI or Be Left Behind. That title is not a threat, it's a diagnosis. And the diagnosis goes deeper than technology. The question I want to hold with you for the next 80 minutes is this: what does a person need to be whole before they can fully participate in a community, in an economy, and in democracy, in digital future? Because here is what I know from this work. Healing is the infrastructure everything else is built on, not a nice to have, not a parallel track. It's the foundation. This event was convened by Judy Snell through WOYA and CAiG. They are the lead organizers, and they are also the co-organizers. Union of Arab Chambers, George Carey Life Foundation, and Sanciel organizations that have been doing this work, this hard work of building bridges between global policy conversations and also with communities. Those conversations are supposed to serve, and I am grateful to be in the room with Judy today and with all of you. Every person on this program matters. We are going to hear from leaders working across energy, health, education, governance, youth, and restorative practice. Each of them is building a piece of the same thing: the human infrastructure that SDGs actually need. Let's begin with a question that sets this all in context. Our opening keynote speaker has shaped economic and trade policy for 22 Arab nations. He knows what it costs when the foundational systems are not in place. And he also knows when it becomes possible when they are. Please welcome His Excellency, Professor Dr. Khalid Hanaf. Dr. Hanafi represents 22 nations at the intersection of trade, development, and digital transformation. He is here to name the gap and tell us what it will cost if we do not close it. His Excellency Hanafi, the floor is now yours.
Distinguished guests, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to join you at this UN HLPE 2026 side event. I congratulate WOYA the collaborative AI group, and all partners for convening this urgent dialogue. AI or be left behind. Artificial intelligence is no longer just a technological question, it's shaping global economies. The critical question before us is not how far this technology advances, but who stands to benefit. The answer lies in building human infrastructure, the institutions, governance, and partnerships that connect people to opportunity and keep innovation serving society. For the young entrepreneurial Arab region, this conversation carrying immense weight. While innovation is expanding, our SMEs still face real barriers to finance, skills, and markets. This is where the Union of Arab Chambers finds its purpose. We build bridges between policy, investment, and local enterprise to ensure AI drives efficient supply chain, sustainable agriculture, and inclusive finance. AI cannot achieve this on its own. Under SDG 17, partnership is the engine that makes all other goals attainable. As championed by the Global Digital Compact, digital transformation must center on people over platforms, ensuring small business help shape this transition rather than just endure it. As we look toward 2030, technology alone will not be sufficient. Our success depends on our cooperation. Let's ensure AI becomes a powerful force for sustainable development through the partnership we built today. Thank you.
His Excellency Hanafi has named the infrastructure gap as at the systems level. Now we go sector by sector: energy, health, education, with three practitioners who are living in the gap and building across it. Our moderator for panel one is Grace Kistner. Grace, take it away.
Hello. Hello, and welcome to Panel 1, the Human Infrastructure and the 2030 Agenda. This event is called AI or Be Left Behind, but before AI can serve the SDGs and meet the 2030 Agenda, we have to ask a more fundamental question. What must already exist, and who is responsible for building it? People are not left behind just simply because they lack access to AI. They are left behind when they lack the power to connect. the human and health capacity to participate, the knowledge to interrogate what they're given, and the agency to shape the systems transforming their lives. As a critical care nurse and board member of SONCL, I've come to this conversation from a field where we learned very quickly that having the most sophisticated technology in the room does not guarantee a good outcome. The human holding that tool matters. The system surrounding that person matters. Trust matters. Readiness matters. Our three panelists see this challenge from very different sectors, but they're describing very different layers of the same infrastructure. Rocky Barfus brings us power, both the literal energy that makes the digital participation possible, and the deeper question of who gains power when infrastructure is designed differently. Dr. Matilda Carey brings us capacity, what happens when innovation reaches a health system but the people are expected to use it have not been adequately prepared, supported, or trusted. And Yvonne Watson brings us agency, not simply whether people can access AI, but those who acknowledge it, recognize whose voice it privileges, and who gets to shape the future that it is building. So that is the journey that we will take: power, capacity, and agency. And throughout it, I want us to keep returning to the one question: who is responsible for building the human infrastructure that the SDGs actually need? Rocky Barfus is an energy and sustainability strategist from Germany and represents women in youth advancement in the UN dialogues on sustainable development and inclusive innovation. She advises organizations on the energy transition and works at the intersection of energy, AI, and sustainable development. Her work is driven by one critical belief: that energy is not only infrastructure, it is the foundation that enables opportunity, inclusion, and sustainability. Rocky, I want to begin with you because the energy is often treated as a technical infrastructure conversation. But in conversations with you before, you described something much bigger. You spoke about renewable energy projects where access to power did more than sustain homes. It helped educate communities, expand opportunity, and shift agency back towards villages, including women and girls whose access to education and public life may otherwise be constrained. So I want to begin with this question for you. Why should energy be considered a social development issue rather than only an infrastructure issue? And how can AI accelerate SDG 7 for social development while reducing inequality?
Thank you, Grace, for introducing, and hello, everybody. Well, I will start with the first issue you mentioned. Energy is treated as an infrastructure issue. And of course, we are talking about critical infrastructure because it is necessary for hospitals, for emergency services, for national security. And in my case, working as a consultant, we often talk about energy in terms of wires, in terms of power grids, power plants. But it is so much more because it is infrastructure for every individual. It is kind of human infrastructure. With reliable energy, without it, there's no education and there's no participation, there's no entrepreneurship, and often also no healthcare. So this is very necessary, and it is the foundation for every other sustainable development goal to develop and to get bigger. So for me, energy is not just infrastructure because energy creates power and power creates opportunity. So we have to see who gets this opportunity to participate. And I love the introduction we got for this session, that it is the question of who can participate, and it is a chance to participate and to involve everyone. So AI can help us to accelerate, and therefore we can use AI in the energy sector to make systems smarter, more efficient, and more accessible. And its greatest contribution is ensuring that people and not just technologies benefit from this transition.
Yes, thank you. And I do want to actually push just a little bit further because you had spoken to me before about participating in global AI dialogues, yet you've noted that these conversations can remain kind of abstract. So when you were in the room, what is the one action that you would advocate which governments, businesses, and international organizations should take today to create a truly just transition?
Well, I think I'm at the moment I'm in Geneva at the UN Global Dialogue on AI governance, and I have one key takeaway. Every technology optimizes for the question we ask. So it is our responsibility to ask the right questions and not just to maximize profits, to maximize return on invest. Of course, these are the obvious questions we learn to ask, but we could ask differently. And then this will help us to get to the right opportunities. And then it will expand the opportunity on how people can accelerate and how everyone can participate. So I think it's very important when it comes to businesses, governments, or international organizations that we do ask who gains access and who gains opportunity and who is still being left behind. And we should ensure that the amount of people and who are left behind gets smaller or not even widened, because AI has such a great possibility. It is an extraordinary opportunity to democratize access, because it's the first time that knowledge, expertise, or entrepreneurship is becoming less dependent on where you are born or who you know, what your network looks like. If you have energy and if you have the devices, you can participate from wherever you are. And that is an amazing chance for us we should use.
So I think I hear from you that energy can be neutral, but not necessarily the access to it, right? So energy
Absolutely.
determines whether someone can connect at all, but who controls that infrastructure, who can shape that autonomy, education, economic opportunity, and political power, the political will. So this is the power that we're talking about, both literally and figuratively. But when technology physically reaches a community or institution, that does not mean that people are ready to benefit from it at all necessarily. So that takes us to capacity. And I would like to actually introduce now Dr. Matilda Carey, who is a public health physician with expertise in global health and development programming. She's the founder of the George Carey Life Foundation, which leads cancer awareness and prevention programs across Nigeria, reaching over 100,000 families with life-saving health education and access to reproductive health issues and their services. She's a passionate advocate for building human capacity to ensure that AI drives equitable progress towards the SDGs. Let's take a quick look at your work before we go into your questions.
Hello, I'm Dr. Matilda Carey. I'm a public health physician with a special interest in women's health, inclusion, and early childhood development. I am the founder of the George Carey Life Foundation, where we believe that a woman's access to healthcare should never be limited by her geography or her socioeconomic status. Our journey is only the beginning. Over the next 20 years, our vision is to expand access to preventive healthcare, empower more women to take charge of their health, strengthen primary healthcare systems, and ensure that no one is left behind. Together, we can build a world where quality healthcare is not a privilege, but a right. That is the vision of the George Carey Life Foundation.
That's some really wonderful work, Dr. Carey. I've been in some of the same resource areas that you have been, and your experience gives us a very good concrete example of the gap from its power to capacity. So through your work in Nigeria, you've spent years building preventative screening programs, but you've also worked with AI-supported screening technology that includes software supporting point-of-care diagnostics and more. And what strikes me when I hear you speak is that the barrier is not simply whether the technology existed. Nurses were being asked to do work with innovation without always having the training, competence, or even the foundations of understanding of AI needed to fully take hold of it. So I want to combine two questions that you've asked yourself. From your experience in community health, what is the most important lesson that you've learned about introducing new technologies? And what does that tell us about the single most important investment that countries must make if they genuinely want to benefit AI to support SDGs?
Well, thank you so much, Grace. And it's really been an incredible journey working in the grassroots in Nigeria for over 15 years and bringing cervical and breast cancer awareness to thousands of women. And one of the biggest lessons we've learned about introducing any form of technology is that there needs to be trust by those who are using the technology and the end beneficiaries of the technology. This is foundational, it's so important. And aside from that trust, before we can build that trust, these two parties need to understand what the technology is, how it functions, why it's beneficial, how to harness the benefits. And then we can start thinking about capacity, helping them to use that technology. It's unfortunate that in retrospect, capacity came first, trainings and trying to help the healthcare workers make use of the technology without them really understanding what the technology was and how they can kind of integrate it into their practice. So in the long term, we fell short, and of course, the technology was not embraced. So in retrospect, what I think is should come first is foundational literacy for both the healthcare worker and the users of the technology. Next, we can start thinking about maybe digital literacy. And once they're comfortable using technology, you can then build their capacity for a specific type. We failed with some of these technologies because the end users didn't trust them. The technologies worked fine, but then they wanted to see the specialist, the doctor, the human who could explain, who they had trust in, and who they could go home feeling better that their situation and their condition had been managed. But when you give that woman, that person who doesn't understand technology some foundational understanding, and then she begins to trust technology, then we will have much more success. And it's the same for AI. AI is growing rapidly, it's just expanding at a phenomenal rate. And these grassroots women don't understand what AI is. So once you bring an AI enabled technology for their use, unfortunately, because there's trust issues, because there's an understanding issue, and they just don't have basic literacy, talk less of digital literacy, the technology will not be embraced. And then we would have much less success.
Absolutely. And, if we deploy a tool without investing in the people with the trusted professionals who are expected to make it work, then who's accountable when that adoption fails? Because that distinction matters. Technology deployed is not technology adopted. And technology adopted is not necessarily that capacity built that you were talking about comes later. You can put AI-enabled tools into a clinic, but if those frontline professionals don't understand it, don't trust it, as you say, and no one to question it, or even have a functioning system around it, then we can't necessarily even create progress. So I want to actually now move towards, now that we have capacity, still another question. Who gets to shape these systems? And who knows how to do that? So now I'd like to introduce Dr. Yvonne Watson, who serves as Vice Provost for Global Strategy and Academic Partnership at the New School, leading strategic vision for global engagement, expanding international reach and deepening impact. Your research explores fashion education through the lens of social justice and the inclusion of Indigenous knowledge. You're also the founder and CEO of Kindred Coterie, a nonprofit intersecting artisan crafts, material cultures, research and advocacy, and immersive design experience in traditional communities. So, Dr. Watson, thank you for being here today. This is where your work introduces what I think is a necessary complication. Your research centers around social justice and education and the inclusion of this Indigenous knowledge, and your work spans design, global academic partnerships, these community supply chains, and even women entrepreneurs. So your lens asks us to go beyond where people can simply access that AI. What I would like you to answer is thinking about SDG 4, it asks us to guarantee quality education for all. But if the AI systems that we are building can only recognize already validated epistemologies and forms of knowledge that we are genuinely expanding access to education, or are we really scaling the same historical inequities more efficiently?
Thank you for the question, and the provocation as well. It's extremely important. And the first thing that I would say is that all knowledge is not created equal. I think we have to begin, there. I have had the privilege to, participate in my career working at institutions where we have a significant way in which we validate, create, and think about the quality of our education. And being at the New School, Parsons School of Design specifically, I mean, I've led a lot of those conversations around the quality of our education, the creativity, the pedagogy, etc. And even there, we have often struggled in our positioning, being a school that thrives on, the breadth of students who we can appeal to, and they are international. So we are local to New York, so knowledge centered, that is often New York based or European, Western, etc. But then we draw an incredible breadth of international students as well. So we've always been looking at that tension point between what it means to be local and at the same time global. And then if I look at wider parts of my career as well, I think about the places where I've been able to participate as well, and just thinking through, what our previous speakers have been speaking on as well. Who gets to participate? What does access actually look like? And then I'm thinking about my experiences of working, for instance, with a group of women entrepreneurs in Ethiopia, and thinking about the infrastructure issues that they have to manage, negotiate, navigate in order to be able to achieve some of the same goals that we all want to be able to achieve in order to be able to thrive. So it does require us to think about how are we framing when we think about the SDG 4, when we think about that as knowledge access. What knowledge? Whose knowledge is it that we are thinking from? Okay, what is the lens that we are focusing through in relation to defining what that knowledge looks like, because that will determine who is actually able to access.
Yes, absolutely. And that moves us beyond this AI literacy as simply a teaching tool and how to teach people to use a tool, right? The real literacy must also come from the capacity of the people who are willing to question the tool, to critically think about it. Who built this? Whose data trained it? Whose knowledge does it recognize?
Yes.
Who is invisible? And who gets to decide what expertise is, right? The difference is the access and agency. So I'd like to bring us all back together now and ask a couple more questions. Frauke has shown us that with the power and infrastructure, people cannot connect. Dr. Carey has shown us that without health, trust, training, and workforce readiness, innovation does not become meaningful capacity. And Vice Provost Watson, you showed us that even with the access and capacity, participation can still mean entering systems built around somebody else's knowledge and assumptions. So a question that I would like to ask any one of you, and not any of you are able to answer this first one before anyone else, where are policymakers and development institutions making the biggest mistake right now in addressing these issues?
Well, I think I'd like to start because it just matches up. They are asking the wrong questions. They are not, AI is it's just a multiplier, and the ones who are asking the questions, they determine what it multiplies. So I think this is very important, just to make it very specific. If we, in my field, if we go on grid connection, don't ask who will we apply first, but we should ask which connection creates the greatest long-term value for the community. So not just going one after another but checking the impact, or not just asking how do we build a more efficient grid, but how do we build a grid that creates more opportunities. So you just have to switch your focus from not just being profit driven, but to put the sustainability and the opportunities for the people in the center of what you're going for. And I think that's the very first step. After every action will come after.
Thank you. And, I think I want to ask maybe, are the right questions, and Dr. Matilda and Dr. Watson, any of you can answer this question. Are the right questions then, are we investing in technology before people? Are we mistaking access for readiness? And are we inviting people into systems that they never had the opportunity to shape?
Yeah, I would like to add something to that, because we've just been speaking about the pertinence of the right question. The fact that if we think about the onset of AI, it requires a particular kind of training, large language systems. So if we think about global north and global south, I see this in the research that I've been doing, particularly with artisan communities. Like, how do their voices from a technological perspective get to be included? We are training AI in very particular ways. We're learning, we are being developed to provide the right kinds of prompts. But if you are an artisan in a community where maybe you do have access to smartphones, but I'm very curious about what research is being done right now to ensure that the people who have been what I describe as stewards of land, a lot of the work that I've been doing, I've been really focusing on people, place, and land. Okay, but how are their voices included in the technology? How are these ancient systems, ancient wisdom, that actually bring a lot of grounded options and theories to the world? How do those actually get to be threaded into this particular technology at this moment in time?
Thank you. And Dr. Carey, maybe I'll close with you. You can respond or add on to either one of those questions, or I could also invite you to give a call to action. So if you could change one policy or investment decision in the next 12 months, what would have the greatest impact on human infrastructure readiness as we move towards 2030?
Yes, I'm super glad you asked me that question. The other day, I was listening in on the progress towards the 2030 SDGs from the United Nations, and SDG 5, which is gender equality and women empowerment, is lagging behind all the other SDGs. And if we want to bring it back to this conversation and what I've been trying to just communicate on literacy and capacity building, is that we cannot afford to continue ignoring the big elephant in the room. And the truth is that, 11% of the world are still illiterate. In lower middle income countries, almost 50% of the people are illiterate, and 2/3 of that are women. So it's really no shock that SDG 5 is lagging behind. We need to begin to invest in the human infrastructure. AI is not a technology challenge, it's a human capacity challenge. We need to start building people. And of course, I'm biased towards women, and we see the numbers in women, we see the lag in SDG 5. So my message to governments, not even just governments and countries, anyone that can empower a woman, start embedding foundational literacy, digital literacy, and AI literacy into the work that's being done. We don't have to wait for a grand plan. We can begin small, tiny drops of water make a mighty ocean. If we have this forms 3 pillars of literacy in every program, I think we'll be accelerating efforts towards achieving not just SDG 5, but all the SDGs.
Absolutely. Really wonderful panel and last call to action. So we've just heard from 3 different languages that are all speaking the same truth. Energy, health, and education are not soft conditions. They are the load-bearing infrastructure. The call to action from this panel is not to slow innovation, it's to build the human infrastructure that allows innovation to become equitable and participation, using insights from the front lines as us practitioners. Because if we invest in artificial intelligence without investing in the human agency to deploy it, we will mistake that for development. And we will not solve the problem of being left behind. We're simply going to scale existing inequalities and automate who gets to move ahead. Thank you so much for your wonderful insights. Dr. Casey, back to you.
Wow. Thank you, panel one. I am so inspired and encouraged, and I have been empowered personally. When I just think about what was just shared here, I have to repeat these 3 quotes. Energy creates power, and power creates opportunity. Healthcare is not a privilege, but a right. All knowledge is not created equal. Ah, these amazing women changing the world, changing people, and using AI and technology to continue to empower and build humans. Thank you. We have heard from the experts, and now we hear from someone who knows the system from the inside, not a researcher, but as a young man who has had to survive it and speak back to it. Isaiah Guzman. Isaiah Guzman is 15 years old. He has already addressed the Chilean Supreme Court. He has spoken 4 times at the United Nations. And today we are so honored to have Isaiah here to speak life into each of us. Thank you, Isaiah. The floor is now yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Excellencies, distinguished guests. Good morning. My name is Isaiah Guzman Arancibia. I am 15 years old. I come from Chile, and I serve as the regional focal point for Latin America and the Caribbean within the SDG 16 Youth Caucus of the Major Group for Children and Youth. It is a true honor to be with you today. Every generation inherits the consequences of the one before it. Some generations inherited reconstruction, others inherited globalization. My generation will be the first to inherit algorithms. For the first time in history, a generation is growing up knowing that AI will shape not only how we learn, work, and communicate, but also how governments make decisions and how opportunities are created. The decisions being made today will define the world my generation will live in for decades to come. That leaves us with a fundamental question. How do we ensure that young people are not simply recipients of development policy and technological change, but active participants in shaping them? I believe the answer begins with something very simple. Participation must start before decisions are made. Today, governments are developing national artificial intelligence strategies. International organizations are creating governance frameworks. Institutions are adapting to technology that evolve every day. Yet, far too often, young people are invited into the conversation only after priorities have already been set. We are asked to comment on policies that have already been written instead of helping to create them. If you want development policy to truly respond to the need of society, participation must begin from the very start, when challenges are identified, priorities are established, and solutions are designed. And this principle becomes even more important when when, when we talk about artificial intelligence. AI will increasingly shape education, healthcare, justice, and public administration. That is why its governance cannot rest solely in the hands of governments, companies, or technical experts. We need a shared governance model that brings together public institutions, academia, civil society, the private sector, and the young people to build an artificial intelligence that is truly human centered. It is not about slowing innovation. It is about making innovation worthy of public trust. If my generation will inherit algorithms, then it must also help define the principles, values, and responsibilities that guide them. Because the question before us today is not only how we govern artificial intelligence, it is how we govern your future. My generation is not asking to inherit a world designed by others. We are asking to share the responsibility of designing it. Thank you very much, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Isaiah has shown us that youth voice is not symbolic, it is a form of diagnosis. Isaiah, thank you. We will hold on to every word that you have just spoken. What an amazing young man, 15 years old. Wow. Also, Isaiah, we understand that you are not just the future, you are our right now. Thank you. And at this time, we would like to bring forward our moderator for panel two, Tashing Nu. You are also mute. There we go. It's so good to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. It is my honor to introduce our next panel, System Readiness, AI as Social Infrastructure. In panel one, we asked and obtained a perspective of what must be built so that everyone can participate in a trusted environment in the human infrastructure, right? We heard everybody, without the trust, human infrastructure is not going to be able to utilize AI in the fullest extent. This panel is focused around the fact that AI is already upon us, and many of us and in our communities are not ready for it for a plethora of reasons, right? From education to social economic issues to uncertainty about fundings that are happening these days. Oh, so I have Professor.
Hello.
Hi, hold on one moment. So there's uncertainty of the official development assistance, there's migration, there's wars, there's trade wars. There's a marked sense of dissonance globally, which can give rise to the skepticism and fear of AI and the revolution that it is purported to bring. So this panel is looking to understand from a systemic point of view what is not the lack of ideation or innovation that is holding us back, but what are the things we need to be ready, and also what accountability looks like. Before we start the panel, we will be joined by His Excellency Professor Mohamedou M.O. Ka, the Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Gambia to Switzerland. He is also the permanent representative to UN Office of Geneva, UNOG, and World Trade Organization. His Excellency Ka is the chairman of the UN Commission on Science and Technology for Development and the chair of WIPO's high-level conversation on IP and frontier technologies and AI. His Excellency sits at the precise intersection of global governance, AI policy, and development. His perspective on governing AI for the Global South is institutional, grounded, and urgently needed. Please welcome His Excellency Professor Mohamedou.
Yes, a very good afternoon from Geneva here. I don't know what time is it where you are. I would assume it's in the morning. Thank you for inviting me to join this very esteemed panel and to engage on the question of technology for whom, governing artificial intelligence for development in the age of the Global Digital Compact. So once again, thank you. But I will say that this question could not be timelier. 3 days ago, in this same city here in Geneva, 193 member states sat in the same room for the first time to discuss artificial intelligence governance at the Global Dialogue on Artificial Intelligence Governance by the UN. So technology for whom is not rhetorical. It is the live question of this week in Geneva. And I want to advance 3 thoughts to answer this broad question. One is rules, room, and rails. And that leads us to who writes the rules and who is missing from the room. Who is writing them? Formally, the architecture is now in place and it is genuinely universal on paper. The Global Digital Compact, which most of you are familiar with, mandated the Independent International Scientific Panel on Artificial Intelligence and the Global Dialogue on Artificial Intelligence Governance, which consists or composed of 40 scientists from over 140 countries. Every United Nations member state is at the table. Informally, the rules are still being written elsewhere first. In the compute and model release decisions of a handful of companies and possibly the 2 countries that host roughly 90% of the world's most powerful artificial intelligence compute. So the question is, who is missing? Verification capacity is missing. A government that cannot independently test or audit a frontier model certainly cannot meaningfully consent to how it is governed. I submit that sovereignty on paper, dependency on practice. My own continent, Africa, is present at the dialogue, but structurally under-resourced going in. A continent with 18% of the world's population and under 1% of global data center capacity negotiates from a very different starting line and leverage. Everyday citizens, workers, and municipal level users are missing as well. Surveys on public debate on the continent show us that artificial intelligence governance is still concentrated among our ministries, among our regulators, and private companies, making it far from the people, the people it is meant to serve. So, what is my pragmatic read? That the room is legally full but functionally uneven. The next week is not an order seat on the table at the table. It is the capacity to use the seat, to be able to have the pen on our hands and contribute to the shaping of the rules rather than the rules made for us. We want to be not only rule takers, rule makers, co-designers, co-architects, co-owners, and sharing the values equitably. So, my friends, what must change so that we in the developing world can exactly do that, can shape and not just receive the digital feature that is coming at us at very fast pace? As I quickly advance, I would say from consultation to co-design. We in developing countries, particularly the global south, representatives need standing seats on the steering and safeguard bodies of the multilateral development banks and the artificial intelligence funds that are growing, that are now being designed, not comment periods on decisions that are already made. The second point on that, we need to move from aid logic to equity logic. I submit that we have to shift financing instruments from grants for pilots towards equity and co-ownership stakes in regional compute and in data infrastructure so that value accrues locally and not just access. And third, from national silos to pooled bargaining, regional compute hubs and joint procurement are important as African, as ASEAN, and Latin American coalitions are beginning to test. These can cut infrastructure cost by up to half and convert fragmented small markets into serious negotiating weight. And fourth, we have to shift from imported benchmarks to sovereign data and languages. National language data sets, local health and agricultural data under domestic governance rules, indeed, are the raw materials of an artificial intelligence that actually understands the global south, that understands the developing countries, that understands least developing countries, that understands small island states, that understands Africa, that understands the diversity in all these geographies. This is a policy choice and not a technology gap. From single track dependency to deliberate diversification, our countries should treat their choice of artificial intelligence infrastructure partners as a sovereignty decision with a 10-year horizon at the minimum, and not a procurement decision with a 10-month horizon. I will also say that infrastructure is core. Without it, we are nowhere. We need sustainable green infrastructure. One infrastructure investment before 2030 to ensure artificial intelligence meaningfully serves development. I submit to you that a global public compute fund is urgent and is crucial, that is physically distributed as regional, publicly award compute and energy hubs on the model of, for example, the South Africa Center for High Performance Computing is a good example, and India's public compute pool already demonstrating a good starting point for us to mimic.
Thank you so much, Excellency Ka, for giving us a glimpse of what is occurring in Geneva. I'm truly excited to hear about the discussion happening, for whom it is going to be for. I totally agree with you in the fact that, it is very uneven. And I love the fact that, we are talking about who must be in the rooms, and the rules written should include all in a very even way, which I think at this point in time, it does not, as you have so clearly stated. So thank you for your perspective. Now let's move on to panel 2, where I would love to introduce our 3 esteemed panelists, starting with Her Excellency Ambassador and Permanent Representative to Malawi, of Malawi to the United Nations, Dr. Agnes Chimbri Malande. She is a distinguished diplomat and global governance leader, bringing the African Union voice to the conversation on AI, partnership, and accountability. Her presence connects the global policy framework to the lived realities of communities the Sustainable Development Goals are designed to reach. Welcome, Ambassador Chimbri.
No meaningful socioeconomic progress can happen when half of the population is left behind. Our conviction to gender equality and women empowerment is driven by the recognition that women and girls are the bedrock on which social progress is based. It is for this reason that Malawi supports the proposal to consider electing a female United Nations Secretary General.
Welcome. Your Excellent Ambassador Chimbri Malande. Malawi is navigating a global AI governance process, right, that is largely designed, as we heard from His Excellency Ka, right, before African nations probably had a full voice, right? It's very uneven out there. So what does it actually look like for you to shape that process from where you sit? And where are the genuine openings that you see that for influence that you all can make?
Thank you very much for having me and for really inviting me to be part of this very, very important and timely conversation on AI. As Professor Muhammadu has said very clearly, conversations are ongoing and negotiations are ongoing about AI governance. And I would like to take you back a little bit that what really led to this, we used to hear on the continent of Africa about digital economy. What is this? AI, artificial intelligence. We felt it was very far. And then COVID hit us. And we realized that connectivity was key and very important. It wasn't, and the AI was not an abstract but real. So member states here, as you know, being an ambassador and permanent representative of the UN at the UN here, we are representing governments. We are representing the people of our countries. So I represent Malawians and the government of Malawi. And governments a year ago recognized and agreed as member states that internet is a critical global facility for inclusive and equitable digital transformation. And to fully benefit from it, it must be global and also interoperable, stable, and secure. So member states also recognized that internet governance must continue to be global and multilateral. Thus, these discussions on the global AI governance at the UN really took place before African nations came up with common positions. You know how we work as African nations, we develop a common position. However, we are aware, maybe you are aware, all of you, that the AU has a continental AI strategy. That's the one guiding us as governments to really look at how we govern AI as it really affects our people. So issues of that concern lives of people are really serious governance issues. And really, they must be managed properly. They must bring in inputs from various actors of lives of people, various stakeholders, from households, community leaders, local government structures, policymakers, technicians, researchers, and also political leaders. So everybody needs to be part of this. As the young person told us earlier on, youth must be part of this. You know, Africa has a young population. The largest young population in the world is in Africa. And we need them on the table to be part of this conversation. The women who are taking care of and developing and bringing children from early childhood, the teachers, everybody needs to be part of this conversation so that we bring on board in our policy making, global policy here at the UN and also in government level, all the issues of concerns by these people or categories of the population. So what AI governance means is that we need to relook at the governance systems in terms of whether the systems are safeguarding privacy and security of people and their lives. And the openings are there. In fact, they are there. Member states here a year ago, as I mentioned, adopted the Pact of the Future and also its annexes of the future generations and the global impact. Malawi, along the other African states, contributed to the negotiations for these documents, and we made sure that the concerns that we are aware of about the youth, the women participation, and all that, they were part of the conversations that contributed to the global governance, the digital compact. Now, following lessons from the COVID, which revealed really that communities are not connected. And why? You know, in Malawi, in fact, what we noted, I was there then doing governance. I was given the responsibility to help government. Then I was working with UNDP. So I had to support government to ensure that there's connectivity between the central government and the local government. Despite that, there were closures of schools and other facilities like that. It was not easy. We realized that because of lack of connectivity, lack of infrastructure for connectivity, we could not connect the rural and the urban. And one other critical lesson we had was that women, or girls rather, when they were not going to school, they were being abused in the houses. And we ended up having an increase in early pregnancies. So, this is what led us as a government of Malawi to look into what governance systems do we need to reform. The policies and the laws had to be reviewed, be looked at. Do we have the policies that can protect? And then, because of that, we have Personal Data Privacy Act and with cybersecurity regulatory frameworks that are underway, being developed. But also here at the UN, we have the Convention on the Fight Against the Cybersecurity. Malawi is party to that. And in terms of accountability mechanisms, we do have them. Various stakeholders, as I've said, have already developed a number of mechanisms for including grievance redress mechanisms, compliance, dispute resolution mechanisms, even ISO for transparency and documentation toolkits, and many others. And talking about the continental AI strategy, which is the Africa one, which is people centric, development oriented, and inclusive. What we need from partners, international partners, is that we need to strengthen our partnerships by having more support in implementation of the commitments that have been made here at the UN globally, and also, this implementation would require predictable and adequate financing, and also ensuring technology transfer that will put to scale any technology innovations that are out there. We need to build capacities, we need to minimize risks, we need to stimulate investment, and even foster more cooperation. So, what is critical thing to be done is to integrate AI into the digital technology, digital technology into the education system, from early child development to the tertiary, so that every human being, every person in Malawi, on the continent of Africa, is prepared to really manage and to be able to use AI for their benefits and for the benefit of their communities and the country in general. So really, I agree with Professor Muhammadi that we need Africa-led data and language that will help us to be able to use AI to our benefit. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that perspective. I think that, it sounds very much as the African Union's continental AI strategy encompasses a lot of what we were talking about, right? Governance in that. But in the AI systems that are embedded in governance for low resource settings like policing or social services, what accountability mechanism currently exists and what guardrails do you think need to be built right now?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have the legal frameworks, the Private Data Protection Act, the other regulations that are being developed. So even in the convention, the Global Convention on the Cybersecurity, we need to domesticate them. In terms of the social services, the health, we have in the health sector, in fact, in Malawi, what started the real game changer was the adoption of the biometric identity system. So we have a national ID which has biometric data for every person, and that has been really a game changer in the health system for health social services. They are able to use that to really, even that would be used even for accountability system in terms of tracking who is doing what. Similarly, in payment systems, we are using the national ID to really do the know your customer system for the payment system with the banks, private banks, and the government Reserve Bank of Malawi. So even in terms of judiciary access to justice, we are using the same, and they are creating AI mechanisms that will ensure that there's accountability vis-a-vis access to justice. So what are the gaps are that really the infrastructure is what is the major gap. We need more investment in the AI infrastructure in the various sectors, multi-sectoral, in the health sector, education sector, as I mentioned, the judiciary, even in other sectors, even local government. Local government will be very, very key because these are the people serving the rural people where the majority of the population is, and they need the accountability systems there that will save and protect the people and their privacy and their livelihoods. So we
Thank
need major international partnerships that will come and help us in technology transfer, in capability of building capacities, and also financing.
Thank you, Ambassador Chimbi Molande. I appreciate your perspective. Now I'm going to bring Dr. Njua, our other panelist. She is the Economic Advisor and Sustainable Development Expert for the Union of Arab Chambers. Dr. Njua is an ESG integration, digital transformation, and climate entrepreneurship specialist at the intersection of regional policy and government development. She is a research associate at the American University of Beirut, advancing inclusive economic growth across the Arab region. Welcome, Dr. Njua.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I don't believe this is a single institution responsibility for building system readiness. In fact, this assumption is part of the problem when we say, for example, if AI is already arriving in communities that are not ready for it, who is responsible for building system readiness, and what does accountability look like? AI is transforming our societies faster than any single government, company, or organization can respond. If we continue to think in silos, we will always be reacting to technology instead of shaping it. So I would replace the question of who is responsible with a different one. How do we distribute responsibility across the entire ecosystem? Systems readiness is a shared responsibility because governments are responsible for creating enabling policies and regulatory frameworks. The private sector is responsible for developing AI ethically and investing in workforce transformation. Universities and research institutions are responsible for developing the skills and knowledge that future economies require, and international organizations provide the common vision and global framework. Institutions, such the Union of Arab Chambers, have a unique responsibility to connect these actors, to translate policy into practice, facilitate dialogue, and build trust, and ensure that businesses, particularly SMEs, are not left behind. So to me, accountability therefore looks less like compliance and more like collaboration, because success should not only be measured by how advanced our AI systems become, but by whether they create better jobs, more competitive SMEs, stronger institutions, and more inclusive opportunities. Because ultimately, AI readiness is not a technology indicator, it is an institutional indicator. If our institutions are ready, our societies will be ready.
Dr. Njua, that, I think that's a phenomenal perspective. I think you are right. If institutions are not ready, your people can't be ready either. So despite these unprecedented advances in AI, progress toward the Sustainable Development Goals still remain uneven. From the perspective of the Union of Arab Chambers, why does this disconnect persist? And what do you believe is still missing from the global conversation?
Thank you. This is a very important question. I actually believe we are witnessing one of the greatest paradoxes of our time. Humanity has never had access to more intelligence, yet it has rarely faced greater difficulty in acting collectively. We are investing billions in AI while significantly under-investing in what I call collective intelligence. Our ability as institutions, governments, businesses, and societies to work together around shared objectives. And this is where I believe SDGs should be understood differently. We often think of them as development goals. I would argue they are fundamentally coordination goals. Climate change is not waiting for a better algorithm. Food security is not limited by lack of data. Energy transition is not constrained by computed power. The challenge is that knowledge remains fragmented, institutions remain fragmented, markets also remain fragmented, policies remain fragmented. AI can process complexity, but it cannot replace trust. It cannot negotiate partnerships. It cannot align institutions around a common vision. Only people and the institutions can do this. This is why I believe human infrastructure is becoming just as important as digital infrastructure, because it is the invisible operating system of development. It is the ability of institutions to cooperate across sectors, across borders, and across disciplines. It is what transforms technological capability into societal impact. So across 22 Arab countries, the Union of Arab Chambers facilitate dialogue between governments, businesses, investors, entrepreneurs, academia, and development partners. We are helping transform global frameworks into regional cooperation, because when we translate policy into implementation, we connect innovation ecosystems that would otherwise remain isolated, because innovation does not scale through software alone, it scales through ecosystems, and ecosystems require trust.
Thank you. You, as well as His Excellency Ka, had talked about a collective intelligence. I think that is so very important to ensure that there is inclusive voices, right, of people who have not been included. What does that mean in practice, and what concrete actions should policymakers, businesses, and regional institutions take to ensure that AI accelerates the SDGs in human-centered and inclusive ways?
Well, when I speak about collective intelligence, I'm referring to the ability of people, institutions, and organizations to work together towards a shared purpose. AI can process enormous amounts of information, but it cannot replace trust, collaboration, or even collective decision making. And these remain uniquely human capabilities, and they are the real drivers of sustainable development. So if you want AI to accelerate the SDGs in a meaningful and inclusive way, I believe we need three fundamental shifts. First, we need to move from AI strategies to AI ecosystems. Many countries are investing in digital infrastructure and AI roadmaps, which is essential. But technology alone does not generate inclusion. We must invest equally in the institutions that enable people and businesses to adopt AI responsibly. Business support organizations, digital skills, regulatory capacity, and innovation network. Second, we must place SMEs at the center of the AI transition. Across the Arab region and around the world, SMEs are the backbone of our economies. Yet, they often lack access to finance, expertise, data, and trusted guidance. If AI only benefits large corporations, it will widen inequalities instead of reducing them, because inclusive innovation means ensuring that smaller businesses can participate, compete, and grow in the digital economy. The third shift is that we need to transform partnerships into implementation mechanisms. Too often, global commitments remain at the level of principles. The Global Digital Compact provides an important vision, but its real success will depend on how effectively it is translated into practical action. This is where regional institutions such as the Union of Arab Chambers can make a unique contribution. Because ultimately, collective intelligence is what allows artificial intelligence to create real impact. Technology may provide the tools, but institutions provide the trust, partnerships create the scale, and people create the transformation. Only when these three elements come together, where can AI become a catalyst for achieving the SDGs and ensuring that no one is left behind.
I think, I think it's so true that the collaboration and, everybody being part of the fabric of what is occurring is the most important thing. Without everybody having a voice included, the technology will continue to be fragmented. Thank you so much. I am going to introduce our final panelist, panelist on our panel, Mr. George Saitis, the CEO and co-founder of Resolution Project. He is a social entrepreneur leader, building systems that identify and invest in young change makers globally. Resolution's project's model is backing leaders before they have credentials, which embodies the human infrastructure approach that we have all talked about and championed during this event. Welcome, George.
Thanks so much to Singh for this invitation and for creating this space for this conversation. It's hard to imagine a more important conversation at this moment in time. And, I think there's a part of me that just wants to say, everyone look at Isaiah and understand that this is what we need to invest in. But there's also another part that wants to bring together some of the pieces that help someone like Isaiah not just find platforms like this, but also to become a trusted source of that bridge between communities, many vulnerable communities, and technological tools that, when deployed thoughtfully and in collaboration partnership with them, can really bring about the transformation that we're looking for and help us move faster and access that force multiplier that this technology should be providing us in chasing down these SDGs that we're running out of time on. So I think I'll just maybe share one bit of context in how I think about this, and then we can press forward a bit. But I think it's important to acknowledge that as much as there has been so much movement and there's been so much pace and speed at which this technology has been moving, we're still in the very early stages. And I think at this moment we've been making a bit of a mistake in how we've prioritized the approach of it, and that is that we've been trying to replicate ourselves with this technology. And so, in fact, there's sort of, many of you, I'm sure, have heard of the Turing test, and we have models that now pass the Turing test. But the question is, do we need models that are able to mimic us? Or do we need a set of tools that provide that sort of power, that speed and that pace, that throughput to move us from where we are to where we need to be a lot faster? And so, in working with a lot of young social entrepreneurs, we see that their approach begins with people and runs through technology and then ends with people. And I think that's a framework that's particularly helpful and critical in engaging on this topic and in thinking about how this can, in fact, transform our society for the better.
Thank you, George. You know, I've been lucky enough to mentor in your organization. I have found a lot of the young people doing exactly that, right? Their ideas, their innovations are for the people, and they are trying to use the technology that they have on hand in order to make it available for the people. So I think that is absolutely needed and necessary to bring the human touch to it. What support structures, given that you're social entrepreneurs, right? You provide so much resources currently for the social entrepreneurs that you support. What support structures do you think are going to make the difference between an idea that comes to be, to a real change in the communities that they are? Because I do find that sometimes they need more funding and they need more support than they currently get.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm frankly really heartened to hear the ambassadors on this in this conversation who have spoken so openly and so specifically about supporting youth, both as part of the conversation and as a part of the actors that can move things forward, because really they need money. They need resources and mentorship and expertise, but they also need trust and opportunities, right? And that is a critical piece that, at an institutional level, is generally in short supply for youth. And so, when you think about the systems that we have that engage young people, the main one is actually the education system. And through no fault of its own, I think the education systems right now globally are in a very difficult place, because when a young person enters an education system in primary school, the idea is that within, call it 12 to 14 years, that person is able to fend for themselves and to hopefully thrive in society and be self-sustaining, self-sufficient. To do that, you sort of have to understand what society will look like in 14 years. And that is an impossible task at the moment. So what we've been doing heavily is supplementing traditional education with a layer of entrepreneurship training. And that entrepreneurship training focuses on problem solving. It focuses on systems orchestration. It focuses on critical thinking, on creative thinking, on continuous learning, right? Feedback loops and cycles, and how those come into play, of course, with the social layer of social entrepreneurship. The overall impacts of those approaches come into play in a big way. And so, when we think about what young people need to be successful in this, they need more than what we've been giving them. And any chance you have, whether it's perhaps as a mentor to support and engage a young person, but really something that everyone can do is to cheer on the young people and to support their journeys and to encourage them to keep pushing and to keep trying. And to some degree, there'll be failures in there, many of them. But in each failure, there's a lesson and opportunity, and the space that you can create through supportive resources, through building a partnership, through being a customer of a young person's project, by just having a kind word for them, right? All of these things can make a difference. So that's where I would say that the needs are strongest, and the opportunities for all of us to layer in are richest.
I think that is, around the world, not just in, nations, underserved or underprivileged nations. I think it is the education system, I think, is very much grappling with how to teach children. Do they, as I have a 13-year-old, do they just introduce technology and use technology And I would agree with you that it really is teaching them critical thinking that they don't necessarily get as quickly now because AI is at their fingertips here in the US. I have one more quick question and then we'll close it out. Social innovation is sometimes treated as a complement to formal infrastructure, right? Something that fills the gap while the government catches up. Can you make the case that young social entrepreneurs are really not gap fillers, they are infrastructure builders? And what does the global, and you have already answered this part, which is global development, right, needs more funding, more support. But, are they just fillers or are they really helping to push governments forward in what is needed and having the government see what is needed?
Yeah, it's a very insightful question. And it's something that comes up a fair bit. The thing is that without that filling, something isn't complete, right? So of course it's essential to have the pieces filled, otherwise it's an outline. Dr. Najua mentioned institutional readiness as a metric for understanding the institution's readiness to take on AI. And I think we can all agree that institutions generally aren't ready. And again, sort of through no fault of their own, they weren't built that way. They weren't built to be prepared for something like this, to be ready for something like this. And so, when you look at that, right, these institutions are also not in a place to take on individual, youth social entrepreneurs in exploring potential solutions, right? But they can build systems that incentivize, encourage, and embrace these young people, their ideas, and their leadership as an essential part of the puzzle. So, if we want these institutions to be ready at this pace and at this speed, we need agility, right? We need agile approaches to help move this forward in a way that actually keeps up or sort of augments our opportunities and utilizing this technology. And so if institutions try to just sort of become that, I think many of them will struggle and fail if they try to do that in short supply. However, there are service core models that exist. There are studios that exist. And these are things where metrics and parameters can be put into place to really support this sort of work across a broad category of youth in a society and in a country and in a municipality and across a number of different geographic regions. And that is, I think, where the big opportunity here sits. It's as if we face these sort of existential issues and, we're leaving a third of our team off the field because they're young. And yet we've seen that they are the natives to this technology. They're fluent with this technology in a way that many of us from a generation or two ahead of them aren't. So why wouldn't we find ways to tap into them and bring them along as part of the infrastructure, as part of the team? And I think that's where we stand to have one of the largest boosts. Microfinance in a number of countries brought women into the economy in an incredibly powerful way. I think this is our moment and our opportunity to bring youth into not just the economy, but into problem solving at an incredible scale that does build around people. And that's where I'd focus and orient that part of the conversation.
Thank you, George. I wanted to thank all the panelists. I think what each of you have brought and your perspectives are so enlightening and welcoming. I am excited to hear of all the conversations that are going on and how productive they seem to be. I think in closing the fabric, it sounded like everyone talked about it's the inclusion, right? Everybody needs to be inclusion in this fabric of AI. And going forward, we have to make sure we don't forget the youth, the women, and all the countries around the world. If the human infrastructure is not ready, well, the institutions aren't going to, might propel it a little bit, but won't propel it to the extent that we need them to make sure that this is for all people. So I appreciate everybody's perspective. Dr. Casey. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to hand it off to Judy for final comments and thank you very much for being here.
That's okay. Thank you so much. Wow, panel 2, you were amazing. And I am truly hearing a common thread here today, an overarching storyline, and that is collective intelligence. We must have trust. Oh, this has been so enlightening, and I can't wait to even take this information back to my own local community. And I believe that as we continue to use this information locally and globally, we will truly be living in a better world. Thank you, panel 2.
But I'm going to wrap up on behalf of the entire group. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, and global partners. As we draw this historic side event to a close, I am filled with profound gratitude. First, to our esteemed speakers, His Excellency Professor Dr. Khalid Hanafi, His Excellency Professor Mohamedou Ka, Her Excellency Ambassador Agnes Chimbre Malande, and every brilliant voice on our panels today. You have elevated this space from a conversation about technology into a mandate for human dignity. To our incredible co-organizers, the Union of Arab Chambers, SONCIEL, and the George Carey Life Foundation, thank you for standing with us to prove that true resilience is built on coalition. Over the last 80 minutes, we have confronted a hard truth. We can engineer the most advanced AI tools in the world, but if we fail to build the human infrastructure built for the people who really these tools are for, to use them, then we leave millions behind. That exact challenge, is why our co-organizers, our partners, every speaker here does what they do. That is the reason behind their work. It is also why Women and Youth Advancement, WOYA, and also the collaborative AI group, CAiG, exist. And at WOYA, we believe that you cannot talk about sustainable development, the SDGs, without talking about the people on the ground, the humans that will use them. And so we build pathways rooted in opportunity, financial justice, and mental wellness. We create empowerment forums and trainings that combine mental resilience and AI-powered business and career development. We don't just want communities to survive digital transformation, we want them to lead it. Through our policy arm, WOYA Global Impact, and CAiG,
We are actively working to position women, youth, and marginalized voices not as afterthoughts of the AI era, but as co architects. We are dedicated to co designing AI solutions that advance equity, access, and systemic change. But we cannot do this alone. The 2030 Agenda demands radical collaboration. To every diplomat, NGO leader, and advocate watching us today, WOYA and CAiG and our partners and co-organizers, the United Arab Chambers, Kerry Life Foundation, and also Sunsiel, we're all open for partnerships. Whether you are looking to integrate collaborative AI into localized small business growth, advance mental health initiatives, or co-create equitable governance and personalized interactive models that advance your mission, we want to build with you. So we invite you to partner with us and to reach out with us. Technology will shape the future, yes, but in our shared humanity, that is what will govern it. We will govern it in our shared humanity. So let us live this from today and build the human infrastructure the world actually needs. Thank you for your time, your resolve, and your partnership. The session is adjourned. Thank you.
It's all in our hands, this life of time that's given to us all. It gathers round each night, each morn. We watch it pass and grow. It is all in our hands, it is all in our hands. With every field and rising sea, can hear the sounds of all, and with every change we'll always be where hope's not lost but found. It is all in our